Hi everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to be doing our third reading wrap-up of the year since the third quarter has just ended. I read quite a lot of books this quarter. I read a total of 14 books, so I've got a lot of books to discuss with you. And this video is going to be structured a little bit differently compared to my previous reading wrap-up, so I will be going through all of the books I read from July to September, and then I'm also going to be talking about some of the books that I DNF'd during this time, as well as the books I'm currently reading. So yeah, let's just get into it. Okay, so starting off in July, I read a total of 5 books. So the first book that I finished was The Girl Who Sold Time by V.S. Nelson. I rated this one 3.75 stars. It's been quite a while, so I don't really remember why it's rated this low, although I do have a bit of an idea. So this book is a middle grade science fiction book, although I personally don't know if I would categorize this as middle grade just because of the amount of violence that there was in this book. I was just not expecting that from a middle grade book. I would say this is more in between a middle grade and YA book. But yeah, this is a science fiction book as well. This is set in Earth, but it's more of like a dystopian version of Earth. I really like the setting of this place. Even though it is dystopian, it's not like WALL-E, where there's like a bunch of buildings and skyscrapers. It's like nothing like that. The way that the world is depicted in this is more like forests. From my imagination, the way that I pictured this world, it's just this like giant forest area, and there's also these like giant like robot structures that were, you know, they used once before and then they sort of just died down and just stopped working, and so they are just there as like structures that people are like using now to like live in and stuff. Another thing is that the forest seems like it's alive in a way, or like it's just, there's something that is about this world now where people can't really sustain themselves anymore, if that makes sense. Like, it's very hard to find food, it's hard to find animals in this place. So yeah, I was just really intrigued with how people have still survived till now. And another thing is that there's this thing called, I believe, the needle. I forgot quite a lot of things now, but that was like one of the biggest projects that the government was doing. So they were basically building this giant needle that goes up to the sky, the atmosphere, and they're gonna build like this ring around it, and that's where supposedly the people from Earth are gonna go up to, and that's where they will all live somehow. So I rated this one 3.75 stars. Like, the story was very interesting, but I think what made me rate this book a little lower was just because I think, again, I have like these expectations with how the book is going to pan out, but then they end up not really going there. But I do appreciate the plot twists in this book. I thought that they were really cool, and they felt like they were out of left field, but then the way that they just like wrapped it in the end, I was like, okay. I guess that there were just things that I wished the author went through further. I wanted to learn more about that, like some specific things, but we didn't really go there. So yeah, I think that was why I rated this one this rating. Oh, I didn't even talk about what this book was about. So we have this little girl protagonist. She's like 12 years old. Her name is Violet. The reason why this book is titled this way was that she finds these little time marbles. Some of them could be like a couple seconds long. Some of them are like hours or days or even weeks long. And she sells these to the other human settlers that are near her. And the way that you use this is that like you put it in your mouth, like under your tongue, and then it sort of dissolves, and then everything around you has stopped. Like, time has stopped for you within the amount of duration of that time marble that you have just consumed. So that's really cool. And for some reason, she's the only one who is pretty much unaffected by this. It just, something happens to the human body and stuff. So for some reason, she's quite unaffected by this. And she's also an inventor. She got this from her dad, who was an inventor who eventually went to work on that government project. And the thing that she tries to do is basically pretty much find her dad, because she believes that he has all the answers that she has been looking for. Like, there's also these gaps in her memory that she believes that when she finds her dad, he'll be able to help her with that. So yeah, if you're into sci-fi, I do recommend you read this. It is a very like fun, interesting story. So yeah. Okay, the next book that I read in July was The Giver. This is another middle grade sci-fi book. I feel like this is a more, maybe not more realistic, but it feels more realistic in comparison to The Girl Who Sold Time. We're basically in this, again, another dystopian version of Earth, and the humans are living in this small, pretty tight-knit community. Everyone has like these different roles, and then there's also this thing that happens every year where there's like this sort of ceremony thing happening. And when you are 12 years old, that's where you get sort of sorted into a specific job that you'll be when you grow up. And so our main protagonist, he gets assigned to be the receiver. So basically the giver has all of the information about the world and all the history of the world from the previous giver. And the thing about this dystopian world is that there's no... Whoa, there's a bird outside my window. Hello. How do I explain this? There's this thing called sameness or oneness in this world. There's like no color, you don't see color, and there's all of these sorts of rules in place. You can't lie. There's also things with how you like interact with people. Yeah, there's like these bunch of different rules in place that you're supposed to follow. Like, you just have a very distorted way of living. And the thing is, why that there is this sameness is so that there is like less chaos and violence in the world, because there's like no comparisons happening. People are also kind of, they're not devoid of emotions, but it's not the same. I don't know how I can explain it. Like, one person can say that they're starving, but no one really in this community has any actual idea of what that word means. Like, they have no concept of any of those things. No concept of pain or anger or like the various emotions. Like, they may say that they're angry, but they're actually just frustrated. But they have no word for that. And they have no concept of that. It's just very interesting. But I do have some questions as to like why is it on your 12th birthday that you get assigned these roles? What's so significant about being 12? Why is there only one giver when it's more beneficial when there's multiple of them, instead of just passing it all into this one person who has to carry the burden of the past and the history and all that stuff? But yeah, anyway, it's still a good, interesting story, and I gave this one 4 stars. This book also has a very ambiguous ending. Like, it's meant to have this sort of open-ended ending so that the reader can themselves think whichever ending you think will happen. I've seen online there's like this more positive leaning ending, but for me, the way that I interpreted the ending was more of this more pessimistic view of things. Still enjoyed the story. Again, if you like science fiction, check it out. Okay, the next book that I read was Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl. I gave this one 4.5 stars. It was just a really nice, cute story. Well, maybe not cute, but it's very entertaining and lighthearted. So this story is about this family of foxes, and it's not even just foxes, it's the family of woodland creatures, and then there's these 3 different farms in this area. Basically, these 3 farmers are so fed up with our main character, Mr. Fox. You know, he has to eat and feed his children. He has to go and basically steal the crops. Yeah, so they're fed up with him. They try to basically kill him off, which they failed to do, but they did end up hurting him. I think he lost his tail, so they're basically hell-bent on killing the fox so that he wouldn't steal more of his crops. In the end, they basically get a bunch of their crops and inventory stolen from them still. It's just a really fun story. Highly recommend it, and I also highly recommend you watch the movie adaptation of this. The visuals are just so cool to look at, so yeah. Okay, the next book that I read was The BFG. I rated this one 4.25 stars. I rated it a little bit lower than Fantastic Mr. Fox just because I enjoyed Fantastic Mr. Fox more than I did the BFG, and that's basically that. The last book that I read in July was The Malvern Murders. by Kerry. This is the first book of the Inspector Ravenscroft series. I rated this one 4.5 stars. It was really good. I enjoyed it. And I mentioned this in my reading vlog that I just enjoy stories set in this Victorian era time period, especially if it's books like this where it's this sort of mystery genre, some like murder mystery kind of genre. And also another thing that I like about this series is that it features an adult main character, which I feel like I don't see that often. So I really like that. So our main protagonist is Inspector Ravenscroft. He is a detective from Whitechapel. That's where he is stationed in the beginning. I forgot how old he is specifically, but he is in his 40s. And I also liked how in this first book, he does have asthma, and that plays a big part in how he acts as a character, which I thought that was really cool. In this book, he specifically gets sent to Malvern, basically to help cure his asthma, but then some murders happen when he gets there, so he takes it up with the local police to help solve the murders. That's basically the whole storyline with each of the books. He either gets sent there or he's already there, and then a series of like murders happen and he helps the local police to help solve the crimes. And I have found one of my new favorite characters from this series, and that is Crab. What is his name? Tom Crab. He's my new favorite character just because he's funny, he's sweet, he's kind. He's basically like the Samwise Gamgee to Inspector Ravenscroft's Frodo, if that makes sense. Great character, great guy, love him. Okay, let's move on to August. I read a total of 6 books. So the first one that I finished was The Worcester Whispers. This is the second book of the Inspector Ravenscroft series. I rated this one 5 stars. This one is still my favorite book of the series. It's just so cool. Each of the books in this series features the specific location of where it's taking place. So this one is in Worcester. So in this one, he's still stationed in Whitechapel, but he gets sent to Worcester to solve this crime where a librarian from this church is found missing, as well as this like really old ancient book or like text that is very important to the church. So that's also one of the things that he tries to solve, not just with like the missing librarian, but also with this missing text. I really liked this book because it has a secondary plot that features a character that we see in the first book. So there's like this little bit of continuation from the first book into this one. And what I love about this is that it also features a serial killer that is supposed to be, or at least inspired by, and it was just like super cool. And it's so cool to see whenever they would cross paths, but none of them would really know, or at least Inspector Ravenscroft doesn't know that this is happening. It's so cool. Okay, it's so cool. I highly recommend you read this one if you are planning to read the Inspector Ravenscroft series. The next book that I read was Matilda. I rated this one 4.25 stars. I'm not gonna say too much about this book because I feel like I've mentioned it multiple times already in this channel. And I will say that I enjoyed this narrator compared to the previous one that I listened to. And I'm blanking as to who the narrator was for this one. The previous one was Kate Winslet. I think she did okay, but I think this narrator for this one did a much better job. In my opinion, I liked the narrator for this one better. The next book that I listened to is another Roald Dahl book. I was like really into listening to a lot of Roald Dahl books just so that I could finish more books, because I was really worried that I wasn't going to reach my reading goal for this year, so I was just reading a lot of these Roald Dahl books. The next one that I listened to was George's Marvelous Medicine. I rated this one 4.25 stars. I have never read this book before, so I was curious as to what this was about. So we have our main character, George, who is living with his parents and his grandma, and his grandma is just the worst. I don't know what it is about Roald Dahl and his books where there's always this one character that just hates children. I don't know what it is about that. His grandma just hates kids, but she's like very annoying to live with, just like a horrible person in general. So in the beginning of this book, his parents are like basically going off to somewhere and he has to like take care of his grandma, and his grandma always has to take medicine. He basically tries to concoct the grandma's medicine by taking a bunch of household stuff, and I'm like, this is not safe. But it's funny. Yeah, I was just like concerned, like I don't see any other outcome of the grandma not turning out dead, you know? The things that he puts together in this medicine is insane. But again, it's just a funny story. It's not meant to be serious, it's just meant to be silly. So I had a pretty fun time with this one. And then the next book that I read was The Ledbury Lamplighters. This is the third book of the Inspector Ravenscroft series. I rated this one 4.5 stars. I did not really like this one as much, although it did feature the same character from the previous book, one of the previous book's antagonist. I don't want to spoil stuff, so yeah, I just didn't really like it this time. The secondary plot in this one was just not as exciting or as important, I guess. Like, because of the second book, I was expecting more from the secondary plot, but they didn't really do anything with it. So I read this one just a bit lower, but it's still pretty good. I still had a good time listening to this book. So the story for this one is Inspector Ravenscroft finally moves to Ledbury, and he's now living in Ledbury with his wife, and they get invited into this sort of annual event thing that happens in this town. So they're basically in this hotel venue thing where they're celebrating, and the lights go off, and one of the like prominent members of this town is murdered. He's basically found dead once the lights are turned back on, and he solves the crime. The next book that I read was Dracula. I have been reading this book for the longest time, and this is just when I finished it. Yeah, I rated this one 4.5 stars. I will say that I really enjoyed the beginning of this book when we were still in Castle Dracula. And then things sort of fell a bit for me when we were kind of out of that, just because it wasn't as exciting for me. But then things did start picking back up again when we finally learn more stuff about Dracula and like what he's doing, and when we've also finally get to meet all of the cast of characters in this book. That's when it started to pick things up for me. That's why I didn't rate this one 5 stars as much as I would have liked, just because of that like little bit in the middle, like beginning part of the middle, after we get Jonathan's perspective from Castle Dracula. So yeah, I still liked it. I love the setting, I love the writing, it was so cool. The way that this story is written is through letters, and you get multiple POVs as well from the different characters, so that was pretty fun. And I also really enjoyed the audiobook that I listened to. I listened to this on Audrey, and I just love it when there's a whole cast of characters. And then the last book that I read in August was The Tewkesbury Tomb. This is the 4th book of the Inspector Ravenscroft series. I rated this one 4.25 stars. This was my least favorite book that I read in the series so far. I just was not as engaged with this one. I wasn't as excited to read. I don't know why. Like, it was interesting. I just think the story and the mystery itself was not as exciting as the previous ones, in my personal opinion. I'm so sorry if you guys can hear barking outside. I don't know what's going on. So for the story in this one, he's still living in Ledbury, but I think he just gets called in to solve this crime. But there's these group of people that were basically confronted by this one man individually in separate occasions, where he told them that they were like relatives, I don't know what the specific word is, of this ancient church person, prominent figure in the church. And basically he's telling these group of people that, oh, you're actually related to this person, and he has like this inheritance, or maybe not inheritance. I'm not explaining this well, but basically this group of people believe what this person is saying to them, so they travel to Tewkesbury Tomb, where he is buried at, in basically searching for this treasure that he has left behind. And because they believe that they're like his relative, that they have the right to whatever treasure that he has left behind. So that is that. Like, you would think that this is like a very interesting story, but for some reason it just didn't really interest me that much in comparison to the other stories. So yeah, I don't know. I wasn't feeling it with this one. Anyway, let's move on to September. I only read 3 books that month. First one that I read was James and the Giant Peach. I rated this one 3.5 stars. This is my least favorite Roald Dahl book that I've read. I just was not really into it. I don't know what it is. I was just not really into the story. I didn't think it was fun or exciting. I mean, like, there's like a bunch of things happening, but they were just like not really clicking with me. So yeah, 3.5 stars. Next 2 books that I read were both from the Inspector Ravenscroft series. I read book 5 and book 6. So book 5 is The Droitwich Deceivers. I rated this one 4.75 stars. This was so close to being a 5-star read for me. However, trying to remember why that is. I think there were just some parts that I felt were a bit like dragging. Like, there was just like some parts of the book where I felt like, let's speed this up a bit. So yeah, I said this was very close to being a 5-star read for me. And I think the reason for that is because it's so similar to the second book, where it features another like real life serial killer in this book, or at least inspired by this real life serial killer, which I thought was really, really cool. And also both of these books, book 2 and book 5, they're both more dark in comparison to the other books in the series. They feature like a bit more violence and gore, I guess, which I'm personally not the biggest fan of, but it definitely adds more to the story, I guess. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. I just feel like they add more to the tension and to the stakes of things. That's why I think I enjoyed those things in these 2 books. Oh yeah, I didn't even talk about what the Droitwich Deceivers was about. So it's basically about this little girl who goes missing, and this little girl is from this very wealthy, prominent family of the town. And there's also another subplot, the secondary plot of this one, which you also see in the prologue. There's this other mother that gets her kid basically taken away from her. So you would think that those 2 narratives would be connected. And I'm not gonna say any more stuff because I feel like I'm gonna spoil stuff. So yeah, again, there's like these multiple mysteries happening. And for the 6th book, The Pershore Poisoners, as what you can infer from the title, there's these poisoning happening. So in this inn or hotel, I don't remember if it was an inn or a hotel, one of the men is believed to be poisoned by consuming this soup. The plot twist is that he never consumed the soup. He doesn't really get called on by his superiors to investigate this, but he does get asked by this other character, which we have seen in book 1. So he makes a reappearance in this one. Yeah, he gets asked by this other character if he can look into things, because he gets this information that the man never consumed any of the soup. So how was he dead? How was he poisoned, if that was the case? So Inspector Ravenscroft solves that mystery and the series of murders that happen during his investigation. Now let's move on to the books that I have DNF'd. So DNF for me means that these books are just books that I put down that I will get back to reading soon or in the near future. So the first book that I DNF'd was A Wrinkle in Time. I found an ebook of this, and the reason why I DNF'd this was just because I did not like how it was formatted. Like, I like to read ebooks on my phone, but since this is on like a browser, it's not formatted the same way as if you opened like the Books app on your iPhone or the Google Play Books app on Android. It's just not formatted the same. Like, if I were to read on my phone, I'd have to zoom in and like move the screen around just so I could read. It made me not want to read the book, so I have just DNF'd it for now, but I will want to get back to it. The next book that I DNF'd was The Wizard of Earthsea. I found an audiobook of this online and also an ebook, so I was planning on listening while also reading alongside to it. And I DNF'd this just because similar to Aragon and The Fellowship of the Ring, I felt like if I were to read those books, I need to have all my time and attention on just that one book. And I personally just wanted to read multiple books during this time, so I decided to just DNF this, and I'll come back to it when I feel like I finally have the time to just give all of my attention to this book. The next book that I DNF'd was The Omnivore's Dilemma, which you have seen in my reading vlog. I have not picked that book up since I put it down during that vlog, but I will get to it soon or in the near future. I don't know when yet, but I do want to read that book because I like Michael Pollan, I like his writing, and it's a non-fiction book, so I do want to learn and read what he has to say. So I will get back to that, I just don't know when. And then the last book that I have DNF'd is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And I did get up to chapter 4 and I just decided to stop listening to it, and I just was not in the mood for it, just because it's a sci-fi book and it has just a more like depressing kind of mood. It's very similar to 1984, where it has this very bleak dystopian world, and I was just like not feeling like reading that at the moment. I wanted something more lighthearted, just not as bleak and depressing. And I will get back to reading this. I was enjoying it, I just was not in the mood for something so. And so as for my current reads, I'm currently reading 2 books at the moment. First book is Nyxia Unleashed. That is the second book of the Nyxia trilogy. I am enjoying it so far. We are finally on Eden, which is the planet that they were trying to get to in the first book. So we finally landed, and things are not what I was expecting, but still pretty cool. And we've also finally met with I forgot what they're called, but basically this alien, I don't want to say creatures, but they're not exactly human. They look human, but they're not. In my head, they kind of look like Neanderthals, are those what they're called? So yeah, I was picturing something like that. They look human, but they're not human. Anyway, so yeah, that's that. I'm enjoying it so far. And then the other book that I'm reading is Mrs. Dalloway. This is an audiobook that I'm listening to on Audrey, and I've also found an ebook online, so I'm reading alongside listening to this book. And I've only listened to the first chapter so far, and I'm finding it very interesting just because the prose was something that I was not expecting. I did find it a little bit difficult to follow. Again, that's just probably because of the language and how they speak, and it is, I believe, what you call the stream of consciousness writing. So sometimes she'll be talking about this thing and then talking about this thing while she's going through about her day, and yeah, it was just like a bit tricky for me to follow. So thankfully I did have the ebook to read along, because if I were just listening to this, I think I would be very, very lost. So yeah, those are all of the books that I read in this past quarter. Yeah, let me know your thoughts on any of the books that I have mentioned and discussed in the comments down below if you have read those books yourselves, or if you're interested in picking up some of the books that I've discussed, please let me know down below. That is going to be it for me today. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!